In Oslo, Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, of course, alongside the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre. Well, Kethevane Gorjestani, our international affairs editor, is back with me here on set. Very emotional press conference there, wasn't it, Kethevane? There's a couple of lines that I pulled out. In order to have peace, you must have democracy. You cannot have democracy without freedom. I mean, those few phrases for me kind of summed up what she was saying there.
Absolutely. She was there to make that message heard. Of course, the Nobel Peace Prize is a recognition of her fight, but it's also an opportunity for her, and especially given her very unusual situation, for her to speak to the world, because everyone is watching her, listening to her. And so this is a message and an opportunity that she has because of that prize. And she mixed the sort of political message and the calls for the international community to continue helping her fight and the Venezuelan people's fight for democracy. She mixed that with some very personal and very emotional sort of comments and details, that detail about how she finally saw her children. And I think she hasn't seen her children for several years because she had sent her children away so that her children would not be in danger in Venezuela. And she talked about how she didn't know, and she was thinking ahead of time which child she would hug first, and eventually decided to hug them all at once. And she put it in perspective, not talking just about herself, but saying what I was feeling, that longing to see and hug my children, is the longing of millions of Venezuelan mothers who are also longing to hug their children who have gone abroad. And that is all because of what the Maduro regime is doing in Venezuela. She was also asked about the political aspect, and it's one of our headlines today, that U.S. seizure of the oil tanker, the Venezuelan oil tanker, and the whole situation between the United States and Venezuela. She was asked whether she welcomed U.S. military intervention, and she was extremely careful in her answers. First, she said that Venezuela had already been invaded, so it was not the United States. She said it was invaded by Iran, Russia, Hezbollah, Hamas, Colombian armed groups, cartels. She said that what was important was to cut the flow of trafficking, all forms of trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, oil trafficking, because all of those things put together were, according to her, the things that were funding the regime, the Maduro regime, and helping Maduro stay in power. And so she said that she was asking the international community, so she didn't specifically talk about the U.S., but said that that was her call to the international community: help us cut that flow, help us cut the resources that Nicolás Maduro had. She did not obviously respond directly to the question of whether or not she would welcome U.S. military intervention, because that is, of course, a very sensitive question for Venezuelans in general, who are not necessarily, in favor of the U.S. intervening, but also would gladly see Nicolás Maduro gone. And I think she represents that and really represented it in her answer.
And just briefly, Kethevane, it's going to be interesting to see what she does next, isn't it? I mean, she talked about wanting, obviously, to take her Nobel Peace Prize eventually, anyway, back to Venezuela, potentially even in the shorter term. But where she goes next, whether she goes to the US, whether she stays in Norway, what her immediate plans are, is going to be fascinating to see.
Absolutely. And she wasn't asked that question directly, but there was a comment that left a little bit of doubt as to when and whether this would be in a short term or long term she would return, because she said, I don't know if I'm going to return and the Maduro regime will still be there, or whether it will be gone by the time I get back. And earlier, speaking to other reporters, she was asked directly that question. And she said that she would eventually return because she believes that that is her place, but that she didn't know when, and that she would return at, quote, the correct moment. Of course, there is the question of security. We are starting to get the details of how she made the trip out of Venezuela and all the way to Norway. that trip back is going to be probably even more dangerous, because now the government knows that she's going to be at some point coming back, and getting back in is going to be extremely difficult. The question also for her is she is she better in helping the Venezuelan people outside or inside? Because when she's inside, she's in hiding. She's not as visible, not speaking as freely and as often, which would be completely different if she were somewhere in Europe or in the United States, where she could be visible very regularly and talking to the international community. So for her, it's going to be also one of those questions, which is, where can I be the most useful to my cause? So the question of security, but also the question of usefulness is going to be probably what determines how quickly she makes it back to Venezuela.
Kethevane, thanks very much. Kethevane Gorjestani, International Affairs Editor, there for us here on France 24.